Your child is gifted, maybe the best in their class, their team, their age group, and you are doing everything right. Extra lessons, focused training, early specialization. There is just one problem. A landmark study published in 2025 in the journal Science found that 99% of children who ranked in the top 1% cognitively did not become top earners as adults. Not most of them. 99%. And it gets more complicated because the very things that produce standout kids may actually be working against them in the long run. This research comes from a team of scientists led by Arne Gulich at Kaiserslautern Landau University in Germany, alongside researchers from the University of Michigan and other institutions. Their study, published in Science, one of the most prestigious peer-reviewed journals in the world, is a sweeping literature review synthesizing 19 datasets covering 34,839 adult international top performers. We are talking about Nobel laureates in physics and chemistry, Olympic champions, world top 10 chess players, the most renowned classical composers in history. This is not a small sample of overachievers from one country or one field. This is as comprehensive as elite performance research gets. And what they found should fundamentally change how we think about raising high-potential children. Here is the single most important insight from this entire body of research. Early exceptional performance and adult world-class performance are not just weakly correlated, they are negatively correlated. The children who are peaking earliest are, on average, the ones least likely to reach the very top as adults. And the future world beaters? They often look perfectly average at 14. Let that settle for a moment. The chess players who eventually reached the world top 3 as adults had actually scored 62 ELO points lower than the players ranked 4th through 10th at age 14. The ones who looked slightly less impressive early on, they became the best in the world. Nobel laureates in physics and chemistry had lower publication impact in their early years than nominees who never went on to win. They were slower to earn their first professorship, less likely to receive early scholarships. By every early metric, the future Nobel Prize winners looked like the runners-up. Now, let us get into the principles. Because understanding why this happens and what to do about it is where this research becomes genuinely actionable for parents. Principle 1. Early selection programs are selecting the wrong children, and the incentives they create make things worse. Across sports, the data is striking. 87 to 88% of junior international level athletes are entirely different individuals from later senior international level athletes. Think about what that means. If you take the best young athletes in any country, put them in elite development programs, and then look at who actually makes it to the senior international stage, most of the adult champions were not in that junior program at all. 72% of senior international athletes never even reached the international junior level. They were not the standouts at 12 or 14. They were the kids who got cut or never selected in the first place. The same pattern appears in chess. 89% of under 14 world top 10 chess players are different people from the later senior world top 10. In academia, 91% of top secondary school graduates are different individuals from the top university graduates. But here's where it gets particularly troubling for parents and coaches. When elite programs use early performance as the selection criteria, which almost all of them do, they are inadvertently creating what the researchers call a radiating effect. Parents and coaches observe that early specialization and early standout performance are what get children selected. So they push harder for exactly that. They start younger. They narrow focus faster. They optimize relentlessly for short-term results. And in doing so, they produce more children who peak early and plateau, while suppressing the very developmental pattern that actually predicts long-term excellence. Principle 2. The predictors of early peak performance and adult peak performance are not just different, they are opposites. The research lays this out with remarkable clarity. What predicts being exceptional as a junior? Starting your sport at a younger age. More discipline-specific practice. Less variety. Faster early progress. These are the children who specialize at 5 or 6, train in one sport year-round, and win regional and national titles by their early teens. What predicts reaching the very top as an adult, starting at an older age? less discipline-specific practice, more multidisciplinary experience, slower, more gradual early progress. The researchers found that world-class adult athletes had, on average, participated in 2 additional sports over roughly 9 years before committing fully to their primary discipline. Nobel laureates averaged 2 additional avocations, areas like art, music, craft, or secondary professions, alongside their scientific careers. This is not a small effect. The statistical sizes here, what researchers call Cohen's d-values, ranged from 0.39 to 0.58. In the behavioral sciences, those are meaningful, real-world differences. This is not a rounding error. This is a structural pattern replicated across multiple elite domains over decades of data. A useful cross-cultural observation here. Japanese youth sports culture has long incorporated what they call taiku, broad physical education and multi-sport participation in early childhood, before children channel into specialization later. Dutch youth development in football famously delayed position-specific training well into adolescence. These are not accidental cultural quirks. They reflect an intuition, now backed by data, that breadth before depth serves long-term development. Principle 3. Hot streaks are built on breadth, not depth. One of the most fascinating components of this research comes from a separate data set within the review. A study of 20,040 scientists, 4,377 film directors, and 2,016 artists. The researchers examined multi-year periods of unusually high-impact breakthrough work, the so-called hot streaks that define a career. What consistently preceded those hot streaks? A multi-year period of working across other disciplines, genres, or styles. Not deeper specialization, broader exploration. Think about what this means for a child you are raising right now. That season your daughter spent trying theater when she was primarily a violinist. That year your son played basketball even though you thought it was taking time away from mathematics competitions. According to this research, those experiences may not be distractions. They may be exactly the developmental raw material from which breakthrough performance is eventually assembled. Principle 4. There are 3 mechanisms that explain why breadth builds long-term excellence. The researchers propose 3 complementary hypotheses, and understanding them helps parents make better decisions day to day. The first is called the search and match hypothesis. Varied early experiences help a developing child find the domain that is genuinely the best fit for their particular combination of talents, temperament, and cognitive style. A child who specializes at age 6 has sampled one path. A child who broadly explores until 12 or 13 has run a much richer search process and is more likely to have found where they truly belong. The second is enhanced learning capital. Multidisciplinary practice does not just add skills. It builds flexible thinking, richer pattern recognition, and more adaptable learning strategies. A young athlete who has played 3 sports develops a broader motor vocabulary. A young musician who has also studied visual art develops a different relationship with structure and improvisation. These cross-domain skills transfer in ways that are difficult to predict, but deeply powerful. The third is what the researchers call limited risks. Early hyperspecialization comes with real costs that compound over time. Burnout, overuse injuries, identity foreclosure. When a child's entire sense of self is wrapped up in one domain so early that failure feels catastrophic, and simple opportunity cost. The child who only ever did one thing has no secondary foundation to build on if circumstances change. Breadth is not just developmentally advantageous, it is also protective. Principle 5. The sweet spot is above average, not exceptional early performance. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive practical takeaway in the entire paper, and it deserves careful attention. The researchers suggest that the profile most predictive of long-term adult excellence is not a child who is dominating their age group. It is a child who is above average, performing well, showing genuine capability, combined with considerable but not excessive discipline-specific practice, alongside substantial multidisciplinary engagement. The child who is absolutely crushing every peer at age 10 is often being trained in a pattern that burns bright and fades. The child who is solidly good, curious across multiple domains, developing broadly, that child is quietly accumulating the foundations of something that may not fully emerge for another decade. And our current systems, youth leagues, school programs, national talent identification pipelines, are almost entirely designed to reward and accelerate the first profile while ignoring the second. This has real implications for how parents interpret their child's trajectory. If your child is not number one in their class right now, that is not necessarily a warning sign. It may be a feature, not a bug. Principle 6. Evaluate your child's development on the right time horizon. The researchers make an explicit point about how programs should measure success, and this applies equally to how parents measure it. If you evaluate a training program, a school's gifted curriculum, or a sports academy only on short-term results, who wins this season, who makes the honor roll this year, you will systematically reward exactly the wrong things. You need to assess development through to peak performance age. For most elite domains, that means your mid to late 20s at minimum, often beyond. This is genuinely hard for parents because we are surrounded by feedback loops that reward early. Youth tournament trophies, gifted program acceptance letters, early scholarship notifications. These are real and meaningful achievements, and there is nothing wrong with celebrating them. But they cannot be the primary metric by which you calibrate your parenting decisions about breadth versus depth, about pressure versus exploration, about how hard to push and when. Now let us talk about what you can actually do with all of this starting today. If your child is currently hyper-specialized, one sport, one instrument, one academic track, this research does not suggest you pull them out of it. It suggests you deliberately introduce 2 additional disciplines alongside the primary one, not as a full replacement, but as genuine parallel engagement. The data specifically points to roughly 2 additional domains as the developmental sweet spot for world-class performers. These do not need to be Olympic-level commitments. They need to be real, consistent, and given genuine space in the schedule. If your child is young, under 10 or 11, and you are feeling pressure to specialize early because other parents are doing it, or because a coach is suggesting it, or because selection for an elite program depends on it, use this research as permission to resist that pressure. The data is unambiguous that the early selection criteria being used by most programs are selecting the wrong children for the wrong reasons. You are not falling behind by keeping your child broad. You may be setting them up for a trajectory that most early specialized children will never reach. Have a conversation with your child about curiosity and exploration rather than ranking and comparison. The psychological framing matters. Children who are developing a love of learning across domains, who are building identity around being a curious, capable, growing person rather than being the best at one thing, are cultivating exactly the mindset this research associates with eventual world-class performance. And finally, be patient with a slower curve. Nobel laureates looked slower. Chess world champions looked weaker at 14. The hot streaks came after the wandering years. That is not an accident. That is the mechanism. If this research shifted something for you, if it made you reconsider how you are framing success for your child, or gave you permission to let them be broader and slower and more curious, we would genuinely love to know. Leave a comment below. What is the one thing your child does outside their main area of focus that you are now going to protect instead of cut? We read every comment. And if you want more research-backed parenting science delivered with this level of depth, subscribe to Smart Start Parents. New video every week. We will see you there.